I got into my business 2 years ago out of pure frustration. When my families leave me, I feel like I am pushing them off a cliff into oblivion to an endless summer without things and resources and agencies that don't follow timelines like schools do. And so I really started to dig down in what can I do to help families to be better prepared for this before they get to me. My background, and Terry kind of gave it to you. I need to update this. But my transition background has been out in a work site. I have been in a hospital. I have been in logistics business like Amazon packaging. I have been in, I'm currently at Bayer in St. Louis, like the aspirin company, but we're on the crop science side. And my students work in the cafeteria, landscaping, and housekeeping. And they navigate our large campus independently as much as they can, and they work side by side at regular employees. We are also really fortunate to have what's called the Bayer Mentorship Program, and Bayer employees meet weekly with my interns to talk about their goals, and they help move them over the finish line. They're one-on-one business meetings, just like they do with their managers at Bayer. So that's really expanded us. But what I could see with that is we could start doing some of these things much earlier than when they're happening with families. So for transition, the federal guidelines are going to tell us that we need to bring that in at age 16 on Form C. The pattern I tend to see is school districts will fill out like education and training, maybe employment, independent living's usually left empty, but we really need to start talking before then. Middle school's ideal, but we can absolutely start before we get to middle school with some of those small skills that we use every day. This isn't just your population. We are talking about all individuals that are growing up. It's part of adolescent development. So the project I'm going to give you right now is to think about your childhood and things that you got to do independently that stick in your head, and I imagine you'll have one that comes really quickly to you. So I'm going to give you just a brief moment. I got to walk to Walgreens with my friends. It was 1.5 miles away. Did we always walk straight to Walgreens and back? No. Did we always get what we were supposed to get? No. But those are the fun stories that you still laugh and talk about with your friends. And so these are the small experiences we want to start giving our individuals as much as we can. It may not be appropriate to send your individual to Walgreens for candy to let them walk the neighborhood, but we can still give them small opportunities for independence along the way. So my goal for families is to prepare earlier, encourage independence. I see so much magic when my interns come and they're allowed just to try small things on their own. One of the big things that I see when they come to me is we have a lot of urinary accidents. And that sounds crazy because they're 18 to 21 years old and you guys have worked so hard to get them beyond that. But I don't have a set schedule when they go to the bathroom. They just say, may I be excused? And so not being told every time that they can go to the bathroom at this certain time is really hard because we've been told probably since preschool, now is the time that you go to the bathroom. And so starting to listen to those cues was something that I started to see. And what grows from that is confidence. They love to come back and say, I just did. I had a student that just graduated, and some of mine are able to email. They email their Bayer mentors, and we can email the bus garage. And we email the bus garage when they're not going to be on the bus to cancel their ride. And so one morning, he was working, and he's like, oh, by the way, my dad's coming to get me to go to the hockey game tonight. And I emailed the bus garage. And I said, you did what? And I was so happy, but it was one of those, like, he didn't let me know, which was completely fine. But it showed that he'd made that connection. I can do this on my own. I can advocate for my ride. And I just said, totally fine. I'm so happy that you did that. Next time, just let me know like you did a little bit earlier in the day so I can check in with Miss Dana. So they love to be able to speak to that. And I don't think Terry will mind, but Cody came in one day and said, I put my laundry away. And I said, you did what? I put my laundry away. And so they start to add that out into other parts of their life so that they can do that. And then it makes that change feel less drastic. And the biggest thing is to not expect perfection. I wasn't perfect when I was in college. I shrunk things in the washer. I didn't always wash things as often as they probably should have been washed. We went out places we probably shouldn't have been out, doing things we probably shouldn't have been doing, but we learned problem-solving skills and things that were related to that. So we need to think about not expecting that, that perfection. As we think, too, a lot of my inspiration came from Anxious Generation. I don't know if that's something that you all have read, but it's been pretty pervasively going through the education system and parent groups recently. And it's looking at the use of cell phones and media with individuals and how it's changing childhood. And that doesn't relate to your guys, but there are a couple terms in there that really related to me. And one of them is safetyism. And he talks about how sometimes we spend so much time thinking about that's not a safe thing for them to do. But what's not safe about it, and how can we prepare them to make that safe? I had conversations with a couple of you about that today. If we think about like some of the college programs that are out there and that they can leave the campus and come back even though it's a disability program. Yeah, they can. But what can we do before they get there to prepare them? So finding that line between being safe and being prepared, and then going back to those rites of passage that we talked about. What are small things we can give them along the way to make those rites of passage? This is probably really hard for you to see, but I just wanted to show this was the ladder that he created for regularly functioning individuals. And it talks about the smallest age in there being age 6. And he talks about weekly allowance, having household chores in there. I guarantee there's one small thing your individual can be doing. Bringing their plate to the counter, emptying the trash, things like that they can start doing. So think about what your ladder could look like in your house for your individual, at home, at school, or something that crosses across both of those. And that's a lot of what I touch on today. So I'm going to use some terms that get tossed around interchangeably, might be new to you if you have younger children. So hard skills are actual job tasks. If I'm going to roll silverware, that's laying the silverware on the napkin, rolling it up and setting it into the container. Employability skills are behaviors in the work setting. It was previously referred to as soft skills. The education world has gone to employability skills. The HR world is still hanging out in soft skills. So those are two words that you're going to hear interchangeably, and I do that in here just so that you kind of get familiar with that. I don't know if that video will play. Forrest Gump's our original guy that was wanting us to work on skills. And I sent it to you guys, I think, as a PDF because I did it from Canva. Anyways, when Forrest hops on the bus, that's when he stands outside the door and she says, "Are you getting on?" And he says, "Well, my mom never to take ride from strangers." And she said, "Well, I'm Doris." And he said, "Well, I'm Forrest." And so then he gets on the bus. And it sounds silly, and you probably laughed when you watched the movie at that point. But something that we need to think about is a bus shows up every day at our house. But if we look at post-secondary transportation, and I'm going to speak related to what I know in St. Louis, we have what's called call-a-ride. That driver is going to be different every day. That van's going to be different every day. Some of ours are blue now because they're electric. Some of them are still black, red, and white because they're the older version. And teaching our individuals to check. Is that number of the bus the same? Is the route number the same? Is that person the same? If that person is different, can we say, "Oh, hey, I just want to make sure you're going to Russell Elementary today"? Sounds silly. Sounds like a crazy interaction, but that starts that habit back early on. When I got in yesterday morning at the airport, I had to check for a red Tesla 3 that had Humberto driving. I had to give him my code, and then we were on our way. So I did those same things for my safety as somebody who was traveling by myself and hundreds of miles away from home, and that kind of matches that connection with what we're looking for them. So this is my niece, Piper, and Piper and I hang out a lot, and she loves Chicken Salad Chick. It's a Southern food chain that is a variety of chicken salads. She really doesn't like chicken salad. She just likes the frosted cookie. But we like to go there together. And so some of the things that we do when we go there is thinking about what she can do. She can tell the cashier what she wants. She's able to do that. So think about when you're going out to restaurants, however your individual communicates, even if you have to translate afterwards, give them the opportunity to make that order and have that interaction with the individual out in public. Let them know that your individual can do that and support them in doing that. And what that does is two things. It gives confidence for your individual, but it also lets people out in the public know they don't always have to default to you for that communication, and it teaches them some more about disability awareness. She's able to fill her drink, and she usually spills and holds on to the lemonade too long, and it goes down the side, but they make napkins for that. And I've taught her how to clean up her area, and she can take her items to the trash. The trash cans there are too high, but she can at least gather up her area, and we can get to the trash can, and I put it in there for her. So those are all small things that you can think about at home when you're out in public that you can start doing with your individual that are just part of everyday things. When I'm at work, I can't just leave my lunch tray in the middle of the cafeteria at Bear when I'm finished. I have to gather all those up and take it over to the line. So what I have done, the school district that I work for in St. Louis met with local business partners and made up what they call the local industry standards. And they have broken them up into 4 sections of employment: independent self-employment, competitive employment, supported employment, day program. I think day program's the last one. There might be one after that. And there are 26 points of employability skills that they look at that can be worked on or that the business leaders have identified are a problem. And I can tell you, for doing this for 12 years out in the sector, it's not just our guys that have a problem. Employability skills are what get people fired the most, and that number is up at 86% in the last survey that LinkedIn did in 2022. Terry and I just recently spoke on that at a conference, and those are people that are just regular or everyday people in their jobs. I have found I could coach almost anybody that is out at our work site in my classroom because everybody has those behaviors that are there. So the first thing that we looked at on that list is independently navigating, and so getting around that location that you're at. So what I've separated those in are things you can work on at home, things that you can work on at school, and how that can cross. And something that can help connect for you all is using that IEP script that I talked about at the beginning that is on the website. We encourage you in there to say, at home, we do this, or we expect this, and we would like you to do the same here at school. One of the things that Jennifer was pretty adamant about with Jules is that they say use the restroom, not go to the potty, and school would say potty, and it was hard for her to make that connection. And so I tried to break those out for each one of these. And if we think about navigating, think about a limit or a deadline on how that paraprofessional is supporting them navigating that building. How long are you letting that person be there with them? And is it necessary for them to be there indefinitely? Sometimes that's a yes. It absolutely is a yes for safety, for peer interactions, however that looks for your individual. But is it something that we could start to do where they say, go ahead down to the ladies' restroom and I'll meet you there, and that's a fourth of the way there. And then they meet them. Go ahead and go down to Ms. Heuring's class and I'll meet you there. Can they do that in increments, and then can we stretch the increments, and then can it be done independently as we're doing that? And then work to identify go-to people in the building. Who are people that know me, know some of my limitations that I can connect with if I get lost, if I get confused? When I used to be in the high school, we were fairly small, but our guys were integrated very well, that when our young ladies would have trouble in the bathroom, almost anybody knew how to come find us to say, so-and-so's having trouble in the bathroom. Here's where I found them. Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate it. Or a teacher that's across the hall. So what we identify at Bear, Eric, our security guard, is a go-to person. Almost all of our front building security guards are go-to people. We walk through tunnels underneath that all look the same. we have learned pretty much anybody that we stop in the tunnel is a go-to person for us if we say, excuse me, I thought I was going to building C, but it looks like I'm not. Can you make sure I'm going in the right direction? Sometimes it means we just need to give them that script, but letting them know that, yes, we need to be leery of people that are around us, but not everybody is somebody that is bad that we can ask for help for. And then at home, start practicing safety signs when you're out and about. In here in this room, above both of these doors are exit signs that can be identified. That's important wherever you can go, and I think you all learned that Friday morning about 5:30. Those are some things that are important for them to know, or identifying in places where there's signs on the wall that give you directions or directories that they know that they can find. One of the big things where we're at, especially because of the tunnels, is identifying where a tornado shelter is. So we identify those signs too. But then also identifying those community helpers. If you're out somewhere and you're confused, who's someone that's identifiable as a helper? People at a gas station, usually that security guard that's in the front of a building, police officers, things like that. So looking at who those helpers are in public. We were talking about community helpers in preschool. That's a pretty common thing that gets talked about. So expand that community helper conversation to people that they can identify for that. We talked about restrooming when I first got on here. Think about how they can be responsible for that. What can they say when they go? Work with your school staff on that. Do they have to say anything when they go? And then can we allow them to do that on their own as much as they can? So my students say, excuse me, I'll be back. And that's what most people say at work, or I'm going to step away for a minute. What can you work with your school staff to say, how can we start to let them see that part in their schedule? Because I know sometimes it has to be scheduled. Or how can they identify when they have to go independently and alert you appropriately? That's some of your individuals may still need help, and that's not something that they control, but that was one of the big things that I saw. And I know a lot of our individuals are routine-based, so maybe we do need to build that in, but we can put that on their cell phone and add a timer. I learned a couple years ago that when you're putting a timer on an iPhone, you can put an emoji after it. So my interns may have an alarm that goes off at 10:10, and it says restroom underneath it, and it has a toilet. So they can either read the words or use the emoji to make that pass on their own. And then the other thing that we think about is environmental tolerance. As you're starting to think about what is appropriate for my individual after they leave K-12 education, there are some big factors that affect the disability population that affect work. What can be handled in that tolerance? Are the things that are going to be said too big for our vocabulary, and we need to look at a smaller, more sheltered work site? If we have allergies, are we aware of those allergies? Do we know what foods they're in? Do we know the reactions that we have? Are we wearing identification on our body that says that if we get into an emergency that I can't speak for myself? Am I carrying an EpiPen? Those kinds of things. Temperatures, and I know talking with Jennifer in a meeting on one occasion, a lot of your individuals don't sweat a lot, so recognizing that they probably need to be somewhere indoors for work, or if we're looking at outdoor work, what does that look like? And noises. So when we're having conversations, we definitely want to identify interests, but then also thinking about those tolerances in there and how that connects with what they want to do. And so connecting all those things to work in school, speak about and identify body signals when we need a break. And I think schools do a really good job of this. You guys probably do this as families. But speaking out loud, especially when you need a break. A lot of times I'll say to my students, fluorescent lights drive me crazy. And I'll say, I need to step out for a minute and go outside because the lights are getting to my eyes. Using words that show what's happening with your body to demonstrate with them things that might be starting to happen to their body. And then talk to that team again. when do they need those breaks? Do we always need a break every day? I have one young lady that loves to bring a snack and eat a snack mid-morning, and we started doing that, and that's fine. Some individuals need that for blood sugar reasons, for how they need to eat smaller meals. There's the things that go in there. But hers was so she could just have a break to be on her phone. But she talked to mom and dad about how she needed a snack. So we worked to work that break out of her morning, and she now works almost 4.5 hours on her own. 4 hours is industry standard, specifically with vocational rehabilitation. And so it doesn't mean we can't have something to start, but how can we work that out? It's been my experience, individuals with disabilities may be different, but they're not clueless, and they know how to work people over for what they need to have done. And our natural supports reel into all of it. And sometimes those people need to be given permission to not reel into it. And our school staff, I have found, specifically our paraprofessionals, their hearts are in the right place 99% of the time, but giving them permission to lean in and be a little bit more difficult or to challenge your individual a little bit more. Do we really need this break right now? Can we delay it 5 minutes until you finish your last 2 problems? Those kinds of problem-solving things. And then at home, discussing environments before you go. You guys probably did a whole lot of planning before you came here. I knew that the climate was going to be different here, so I brought a whole lot of electrolytes with me because I knew that was something that I needed for my body. You probably packed a lot of things for your individual. Having those conversations of, you really need this when we go out to see fireworks. We're going to pack it in our bag. Or could you go get your neck wrap so that we can put it in the bag for fireworks so that they know when I'm out someplace that's hot, or if I need my headphones when there's going to be loud noises, that's going to be part of their packing process. And then identify what they need to maintain their own health. Sunscreen, hats, water. What location do we use those items in? And that could even mean that on your hall closet you have a sign that says outside in summer, and you put pictures for things that you need and they can grab that from the hall closet. Helping them to identify ways they can support themselves in different environments. Personal hygiene is one that we work on a lot in my location. And again, it's not a problem that is unique to them. But one of the things we talk about a lot is headphone hair. And I see that when individuals come into me in the morning, I can tell that them and their families spent the morning getting themselves squeaky clean to come into work because we have a checklist, and they check themselves in the mirror. And they check off if they've completed that item, and then they meet with my job coach to confirm that. But what they don't realize is when we put the headphones on and we push them back, I've just messed up all the fantastic hair that I brushed at home, which is fine. I can listen to my headphones in the van or the bus, but then I need to grab my comb out of my cubby when I get to work and comb my hair when I put my headphones away. And I just talked about how we have that mirror and checklist. You can do that at home, having that checklist of what that looks like to get ready in the morning. And then when you are out eating or at home, encouraging those eating behaviors, checking your face after you eat, using a napkin, checking your clothes after lunch, and messy foods. One thing that they do at Bear that still boggles my mind is every other Friday they have Hot Wing Friday, and we throw almost all of them away. Well, because people don't want to eat hot wings in front of their coworkers at work. Like, that's not a clean work fit. Your hands are dirty, your face is dirty, your cheeks are dirty. So you can love hot wings, but maybe that's just not something that you eat at work. And those are conversations that we like to have to help them set up for success, so it's not all over their face when they go back to work or when they go back or it doesn't get all over their shirt. And then at home, have them be responsible for what they need. Oh, we didn't get napkins put on the table. Have morning and evening checklists for items that they need. The other thing that it makes me giggle every time it happens, my interns, as the best of their ability, lead their IEPs. And one of our pretty common goals in some form on Form C for independent living is keeping track of personal hygiene items, because many of them think that the deodorant magically appears in the cabinet. the new stick when it's finished. And so where can they let you know that they need new shampoo or toothpaste? Is that a conversation with you? Is that a card that they bring to you from an envelope in the bathroom to the kitchen? So that they start to understand that they're going to have to keep track of those as they're going. And then one thing that I see a lot, and I talked with a couple there's a spider on this microphone, sorry, that I've talked with families a lot the past couple days is maintaining those skills. A lot of you have expressed seeing some aggression at certain times. Think about ways that they can do those skills and maintain them. So like classroom jobs, something every day that they might do at home. Is it vacuuming? Is it sweeping? Is it helping clean up at the end of the day? A job box. A lot of you that I talk to, there's a small enterprise at work. Can we talk to them at school about adding a work review? What would that boss say about your work? And then at home, what chores can they manage? There's probably at least one small thing that each individual could manage, even if it's just putting their pajamas on the bed instead of the floor when they get dressed in the morning. Things like that. And then have weekly or monthly reviews as a family. You know, trash cans were your job this week and all of the trash cans are still full. What are we going to do when we have trash that we need to put away? And then just spot check their work as they're going along. One of the big things that doesn't seem like it would be big is taking out trash or changing trash bags. The act of that bag is across several different industries. Opening it from a roll, tearing it off, shaking it open, and putting it over a can. It happens in hospitals for linens. A lot of places have bags that they keep their linens in. They may be cloth, but you still have to shake them open and put them over the container. So adding those chores that seem like they're trivial into your home chores list so that they're practicing some of those things. And then learning in limited time. So when we look at all those things that we just talked about, did you clear the table in 3 minutes yesterday, but today it took us 18? What was the difference there? Were we tired? Did we just not want to do it, so we were arguing, talking about what that difference looks like in that time? Because most industry standards have a time frame that things need to be done. Fast food is really fast. We know that. But then there's some leeway in some other places, starting to look at where time can be done and talking with your school professionals about that too. A lot of times we give endless time, which is needed, but then also looking at where can we give short time frames so you know what your expectation is for completion so that you can do that. And then the other big thing that I see, and I fully blame educational staff, and I will take on all of that for all of us. Again, that heart is in the right place always. But helping our individuals recognize when they need help or when they don't understand. And so demonstrating how to ask for help. Can you help me read this page? Can you show me how to finish this? And knowing when it's okay to ask peers instead of the teacher. How many times at work do you go to the person in the desk next to you because you weren't listening in the meeting and you're like, hey, yesterday when Casey was talking, she said something that we need to add into our IEPs. What was it? And that's an okay thing to do at work. But sometimes it's not an okay thing to do at school if you're asking for answers. So helping them understand that difference. And then asking school to wait for that communication. One of the big things that I and my job coach spend quite a bit of time on is letting individuals just sit and stare at us. And that's because they're so used to somebody coming to them first instead of having that response. And we even start with, it doesn't have to be the, can you help me? It could be saying, Deanna, I need you, or Deanna. And then we can add in, I need help, or I need help with the dishwasher. But waiting for them to communicate that help instead of always being the one that reaches in and does it for them. That's building yourself into a situation. And our educational professionals are really good about building themselves into processes, and that gets drilled in really early. But and just like earlier when I was talking, communicate when you need help. We give this appearance as adults that we do all these things on our own. I don't change my own tire. AAA's come to help me do that this summer when I had a flat tire. I don't change the oil in my car. I have to make an appointment for that. Talking about how we don't need to do everything on our own all the time, but who can we go to for that help? And then practice asking for help in public, asking where the restroom is, locating an item in a store, asking if they have a different size, is it on sale, thinking about that communication that your individual can give to the best of their ability. So I've talked about a lot of these as I've gone through about the barriers that are there for our individuals that support staff that mean well, that they just keep inserting themselves or they just keep anticipating and doing it for them. Peers get really good at that too, and they feel good about doing it because they think that they're helping them, but it's really not helping them. So give peers permission to step back and question them and help them to learn things. And then some of our barriers are always going to be locations that are working, the staff that's available, and how scheduling works. Sometimes there may just not be that time to work through that wait time at that moment, but how can that look different? And then at home and with your families, think about who in your family is doing that. Are you guys giving them the opportunity to ask for help, but when they go with grandma's already done 12 things for them, and they love to go see grandma because she does 12 things for them? My mom likes to do that for my niece and nephew, and it's because she loves them. That's what she tells me, but I just love them. Well, if you love them, let them have this opportunity to fail. And in my last presentation, one of the gentlemen said, allow them the privilege to fail so that they can do better next time and be independent. And I had not heard it phrased as a privilege, but that is absolutely a privilege for them because that's where you do your most learning. There's a lot of things that if you think back, I'm sure there's one big thing that you're like, man, if I wouldn't have done that, this wouldn't have happened, but you haven't done it again in that way. Our individuals are the same way. And then sometimes we just get too curriculum focused, and that's okay. We want our individuals to learn skills, but can we look at the curriculum and use those skills within the curriculum? So I talked about environmental signs earlier. If I'm learning letters and I am at short, small stints of letters, an exit sign only has 4 letters in it. That's a small stint of letters. So at school, can I find the exit sign? And then can I tell my para or my peer the 4 letters that are in that sign? I'm working on reading and I'm working on an independent living skill together at my increment that I can manage. So those are just some ways to think about barriers that might exist at school and at home. So what are some barriers that you all see as far as independence or next step that you might need some help working through?
Don't all raise your hands at once. So you alluded to these kids being very capable of getting people to do things for them. This is a barrier we have encountered. And I wonder if you have advice on that. Sometimes it's not possible because it's going to lead to a meltdown. I'd rather avoid that. But sometimes it can be pushed. And more how to tell which is which kind of a thing.
And that's going to depend on your individual, and it's tricky. And I will say I'm absolutely guilty of this despite the large warning that Terry gave to me about how good Cody is at it. And in fact, she was there the one time it happened, helping us cook in my classroom. And so I think just being open with the people that you work with about your expectation that you want independence, and as best you can identifying, is there a facial expression? Is there a body language that happens when we start to reach expectation where we can push to this point and then we probably need to pull back? That would kind of be my recommendation with that.
So we have an issue with personal hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, so it was resonating when you're talking about meal times. You know, and because my daughter, she kind of eats like she was raised by wolves. You know, like she uses her fork. Her fork. She won't use a knife. Trying to get her to cut her own food. It's been really hard. But then she'll kind of use her hands to kind of help. You know what I mean? Like push the food around, and then like her face is all messy, and it's a constant like, okay, darling, go look in the mirror,
Mm-hmm.
and like you need to deal with this. And she just laughs. Like there's been some progress, but there's an inflexibility and a rigidity, and it almost feels like it's a way of asserting her autonomy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't have to. I can walk around with
Yeah,
messy face if I want
so
to.
the question in there, like, how do you, I guess some hacks, like how do you kind of get at, she's better at school
Mm-hmm.
than she is at home,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with that. Yeah, if you have any
So
advice.
I'm going to speak to school, but it can relate to family. So what I do when I have individuals come in, we start to make that the habit after lunch that we go to the bathroom and go to the bathroom, check our face, and after we wash our hands, use the paper towel before we throw it away. But I have some really great natural supports that when they come back in the kitchen will be like, whoa, what'd you have for lunch? Because I see it all over your face. We all have that one family member or friend that's willing to do that. So I would say on the occasions that you're hanging out with them, allow them to be that one that says, man, what'd you have for dinner today? Pizza? Because I can see your pizza on your face. It's same thing happens for me as a teacher as I think it probably does for you all, for parents. You can say things all day long and it makes no difference. It's when that other person that might be important to them or they see in a different way says something. It's like, whoa. Miss Tanya said I had pizza on my face today. And when they come back to the classroom, I'm like, mm-hmm. And I think we told you that after lunch. But it made a difference when Miss Tanya, the cook, said it because that's somebody that they respect in there. So think about who are those people that you have that you could connect with to help you with that. Yeah.
Next question. I will throw in there for transition from grade school to middle school, because I know that we have some individuals that are getting ready to do that type of transition. And I took my older son into the school, and we did 3 different days. We memorized Cody's schedule, and Big Brother is great at this. Big Brother would take him and say, okay, here's class 1, class 2, class 3. We're walking around the whole school. Then Big Brother's like, okay, I'm going to take you and I'm going to drop you off at the gym, and I give you 2 minutes to find me at French class. And he would leave him, which it was great. It was a closed environment because it was before school started, but he would leave him. Well, the big thing right before school, these are the words I hate, and Deanna knows how much I hate them, is don't worry, someone will. Those are big red flags in my world. And so the first week of school, the teacher calls up and says, oh, Mrs. Jordan, I am so sorry, but somehow Cody managed to ditch the para and went to classroom without them. And I'm like, yes, I am so happy to hear that. So then we get up to high school. Now we went from a school that had 300 kids to 800 kids. And my son ditched the para day 2. And he went upstairs instead of downstairs just to avoid them. And I was jumping up and down for joy, and they're in panic mode. But he beat him to the classroom, and he was there ready to go. But that was just pre-planning, putting him into the school, letting him find his way around. And yes, Big Brother would take him to the high school and lose him somewhere on purpose and then tell him to go find the class. And it's scary. Coming.
I don't know if it's a barrier. I would say more of a challenge is when you leave the structure of the public or private school system that has been, 8:30 to 3 every day, and then maybe sports afterwards, and you are off into adulthood, you lose your friends, you lose that structure, and you lose a lot of resources. And so I don't mean to be Debbie Downer.
No, that's absolutely
but
what happens.
That is the truth. And so as you're trying to prepare these, a lot of what you've talked about, I would just encourage people to start talking to families that are already out there and try to come up with your own groups. Special Olympics has been great for us. But it's really difficult to lose that structure.
Yes, and even this agency's social groups don't always meet often. Like, we have some by us that are like once a month on a Tuesday. Well, I've got 29 other days to fill enjoyment with, and friendship with. So looking where that piece can happen too. And that's where we see some skills slide backwards too, because we're not using the social and things like that together. So just in conclusion, the big thing I want to look at is that the change is going to include everybody, and it's kind of been, I think, the drum that everybody's beat for you all is you're that advocate and you're individual. If your families won't support you in this when you're at your gatherings or with things, make it part of the classroom routine. There's simple things that you can ask school to do that they're probably already doing. You're going to get pushback, not only from your individual, but from people that you're working with, your families, the school teams. I've talked to several of you in the past 2 days about pushback from the school teams. That's unfortunately a side effect that happens. And it does take time and patience. It's not something that happens overnight, and that's why I'm really passionate about starting small things early. And it doesn't mean you have to pick one from every category that I presented today. Pick one thing to go home and start doing, and do that for 6 months, and then look at something else. It doesn't have to be like a magic, let's add 20 things to our life that are also going to challenge us. But give confidence. You're going to see progress sometimes in unexpected ways when you start to give them just little pieces. I talk about this, I instruct others in it, and hands down every year I have students that do something just like my student did with emailing the bus garage, that I'm like, well, wait, this is exactly what I wanted you to do, and you did it, but like out of nowhere. You'll see these things that are just incredibly shocking and will give you those glimmers that what you're doing, there's a purpose and it's helpful. So please stay connected with me. I've gotten to talk to many of you that are in the room today. I was really passionate when I started my business to do this. I have a Facebook and Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I share different things with that, the QR codes to my website. I also have business cards if you've taken in way too much in the past days and you need to look at it later, that I can give you afterwards. Well, I thank you all. It's been a huge pleasure. I'm going to start crying. And a blessing to get to meet you all and see the amazing work you do with your individuals, because you hear this all the time. I don't know how you do it, but you are truly amazing people. So thank you for letting me be a part of your group.